Monsters aren't born, they're created. And I think this video is going to be very important. And honestly, I think all the videos I'm going to make on this series are going to be very important because we're going to dive into the deeper aspects, the deeper conversations involved in this documentary, and not just talk about, you know what I'm saying, what happened, but really try to get in the in-betweens and figure out how some of this stuff takes place and how a human being can end up turning into this. You feel what I'm saying? I think that's the important conversation we need to have a better understanding of our species. You feel what I'm saying? Now, that doesn't mean that you have to give Diddy any grace, because Diddy has committed outrageous crimes against humanity. So I'm not sitting here mad saying like, oh, you gotta forgive Diddy or nothing like that. No. What I'm saying is every villain has an origin story. No matter how you feel about it, no matter if that offends you or not, there's a difference between how you feel about stuff and reality. And reality is every villain has an origin story. Every villain has events, places, environments, circumstances that push them in the direction that they go. Some people don't allow those things to control them. Most people do. It's humanity. Okay, we live in America. America's really, we can really get in down to it all the way to the wording in America and hypnosis behind some of this stuff. But it's a mind game at the end of the day. And Diddy is a product of this environment, a product of this reality. And we about to start breaking this down, okay? So the one thing I didn't know about Diddy, first of all, I didn't know a whole lot about his upbringing. I didn't know that Diddy's father wasn't around, okay? And that's one thing. Just because your father around doesn't mean you're gonna turn around and become what Diddy's become. I don't think that's the case. But when they started to break down his mother's story, I started to realize, oh, okay, this is kind of wild. This is kind of crazy. Because Diddy's father was murdered, right? The mom was trying to then from that point on make Diddy whatever she admired at that point. And that's extremely important to acknowledge and talk about, because this means she is kind of handcrafting her son, right? And it could be to compensate for the loss. It could be from the pain. It could be, and once again, these conditions are consistently found in what community? And these conditions didn't just come out of nowhere. These conditions are put in place to dismantle the black community. I always look at America and say, one thing I started to realize was we might have been looking at this from the perspective of we have these are our oppressors, and they are our oppressors, right? But I don't think they look at it like that way. I don't think they look at it as if we are the people they are oppressing. I think they look at it as if they are at constant war with us. They are at war with us, and therefore they do whatever they can to dismantle us from potentially taking a free country over, right? They have to maintain their dominance and not allow us, right, black people, to gain that same, because there's no telling what's going to happen. And on top of that, it will remove them from the powerhouse in this country. So when I see this situation happen with Diddy and the dad is murdered, right? The dad was selling drugs, right? He passes away. The mother is now on her own. Not only is she on her own, she has to swallow all of the pain, all of the sorrow, the grief, right? And continue to raise a boy in the same process, right? Some women are able to handle this. Some people are able to handle this and do the best that they absolutely can. I think my mom did a great job. You feel what I'm saying? I know other people I know who only had their mothers around, and they did a pretty good job, did the best they can. You feel me? Be functioning members in society, living life, doing what we can, right? But then there's people that can't, you know, and they find ways to cope and figure it out in more difficult, wild ways. And his mother was pretty much the one that was introducing him to this lifestyle. She gave him this lifestyle. She handed him this lifestyle, according to the documentary. She handed him this lifestyle because Not only was she dressing him up and making him into something that she wanted him to be based on who she admired at the time in Harlem, right? But she's also throwing these huge parties with celebrities and stages and dancing and drugs and alcohol and all this different stuff. And she's not removing Diddy, right, from these circumstances. So Diddy's in here partying with all these grown ass adults. You feel what I'm saying? These grown ass men and women who are doing drugs, who are drinking, who are doing all types of wild stuff. You feel what I'm saying? Wild stuff. And he's sitting there watching all of this as a child. And you know how children are. When children see their parent doing something, they love their parent. They love their parent. They want to be what their parent wants them to be. They just want to make their parents proud. They don't come into the world knowing this is how what my parent is doing is wrong, or what my parent is doing is wrong. And it's not to say that having these parties is totally wrong. It's about the conduct that's happening in the parties that becomes wrong. It's one thing to have a party with a whole bunch of people, even the people, you know what I'm saying, doing their thing or whatever. I'm not sitting here saying people can't do drugs and all that. But, bro, once it start moving into, these are the environments that get created where crazy behavior starts happening. To have your child in this vicinity too, you're begging your child to become the same thing. Now, the thing about money amplifies who you are in that moment when you get that money, right? That's what I believe. I believe that money amplifies you, right? And it's dependent on who you are when the money gets to you. You see what I'm saying? I think that's what happens. When you're talking about somebody who's coming up in this environment where it's just parties, drugs, boom, boom, and now he's seeing these movies like Superfly and all that, and he's getting this really game and seeing Hustlers and all this different stuff, and he wants to become that. Once he gets in that position, it's now amplified times 10. Now the parties that he used to see as a kid are tripled and quadrupled and quintupled, and the level of what's going on in these parties is taken beyond what he experienced as a child. That's what happens. Okay, now, once again, because I know it's going to be somebody or some people in the comments trying to spread a narrative and say, I'm asking people to give grace to Diddy. No, I am not. Nobody's asking you to give grace to Diddy. Everything in life does not have to be black and gray. I mean, black and white. It can be gray. And what we're saying here is, even though Diddy has committed incredible crimes against humanity, it's important to acknowledge the process and how he got there. Because if we understand that, we understand a whole lot more about this society that we live in. And then it becomes more obvious the conditions and how they affect our people, right? So Diddy is a child who is essentially a product of his environment, right? And without that being checked, if Diddy isn't with the pain of losing a father and whatever other pain that he was potentially experiencing that people don't know, that he might have kept to himself, right? Because that's what boys do. A lot of if y'all got kids, pay attention to your boys, because your boys will act like nothing is going on, and they fighting against the world out there, or they fighting against the world in the house, or in today's life they fighting against the world on the internet, right? And you have no idea. They go outside and they go to school and they could be potentially at war, right? Whether that means at war with people trying to pick on them and their identity, or people trying to, whatever it is, there are a lot of silent wars in a boy's experience. So when it comes to Diddy, there's no telling what he was experiencing and going through, right? If you don't get that, if all of this trauma that Diddy has experienced doesn't get figured out and doesn't get checked, and he doesn't go try to take care of it, this is how it manifests. All of those limiting beliefs, all of those, I guarantee you all these things are tied to his childhood and the beliefs that he was taught and the things that he made up about himself in his childhood, whether it was based on his mother, based on his father, whatever it is. Those stories that he confirmed about himself and his childhood are what drives his ambitions. They're what drives his decisions. They're what drives his relationships. His all of that, all of it. If you don't go get that figured out and go get that checked and recorrect it and find out that that's not all of this doesn't have to be true. The limiting beliefs don't have to be true. The determinism does not have to be true. You can reshape and redesign and go back to your inner child and hold your inner child and hug your inner child and be there for your inner child. Okay? And from my perspective, it doesn't seem like Diddy did any of that. And he might not even had the access to do for any of that. Especially when we talk about the times that these guys are coming up in. Matter of fact, let me make this. The times that people are coming up in. We talking about, what was this? The 70s or something like that? Like the 80s? You feel what I'm saying? Like, this is, y'all know what time it was. And we don't talk enough about like the real dramatic effects of the crack epidemic too. Like, bro, it be stuff that you be learning about your family. Like, it's wild, bro. Like, you don't even notice. Even if your people in your family didn't do the drug, right? They might have been affected by the person who did do it, right? And then those behaviors get passed down. And somebody's got to be able to unwrap those behaviors and unbend those behaviors, because what are you supposed to do then? You just living your life through that lens at that point. And my whole point in this whole video is Diddy wasn't born a R-worder. Diddy wasn't born about all this different stuff. He was created. He was influenced and pushed into that direction in a guideline sense of a way. You feel what I'm saying? From where you come from to your childhood to how you grew up, all that different stuff. Some people are able to grow beyond it and break through, but that's extremely difficult to do. But it is the change in your life that you need. But I think this is what happens right here. This is what happens when that goes unchecked. When you have no real way to let this stuff out. When you have no real way to address your situations. And the crazy part about it is when you get money, right? If you're in this position and you get money, why would you go do that? If you're taught that money and power is everything, why would you focus on anything else? This is what he was taught. He was taught that money, hustling, power, sex, all this stuff. This is what life is about. And I don't think at any point he actually went and checked in and said, yo, I need to go figure this out. I need to go break them. And it's like, why would he? He got what people in this country typically want. And that's the financial freedom to do whatever you want to do. Right? So, of course, I don't think most people ain't going to do that once you get money and them resources. But some people do. AKA Kendrick Lamar, AKA Jay-Z, AKA it's other artists. It's a bunch of other artists that took place. But most people don't do it because it's hard and it's difficult. And most people are trying to run away from that, not engage with it. You feel what I'm saying? So it's important to acknowledge that. And this is going to be a multi-part series because I think even down to his relationship with Pac and Biggie, if you go down to his childhood, the way they expressed the childhood, it makes sense. Why, even with all the money in the world, all the power in the world, all the women in the world, the access to do all this different stuff, Diddy still didn't have enough. It was never enough. It was never enough. Why? Because the real thing that would be enough is probably too difficult. For you got to unwrap everything and get back to your inner child to find out what is enough for you. If you don't do that, you'll never know what's enough, and you'll never feel like you have enough. I had some food in the oven. I was like, wait, I smell something. I think my house about to burn on fire. But anyway, I'm about to cut this in a second because let me go check on that food. But all I'm saying is this. This is how monsters are created. And if nobody is standing there and telling you, hey, I know, I understand, you know what I'm saying? Like, take a second and reflect on what's going on and break it down. And nobody's there to talk to you like that and hold you accountable. And then there's nothing, people not, you got all the money, the power in the world. I guarantee you, it's not a lot of people who even had this conversation with Diddy because they got to be yes men. You feel me? It's so much stuff that go into this stuff. And this leads to somebody going down the path of absolutely no return. You feel what I'm saying? And I'm not saying it's absolutely no return because it could be a return between him and God. That's it. But as far as anywhere else, it's going to be difficult to do that, bruh. You know what I'm saying? And I just felt like it was very important to make this. Monsters are created. They're not born. And when you look around and you look at humanity, if you could look at it from that perspective, things make a whole lot more sense. And that doesn't mean that for understanding and empathy means you have to associate with them or you have to forgive them or any of that. But you'll love yourself a lot more if you can love others. That's just how it is. That's how it is. And I won't even say more. You either do or you don't. And I think that's really how it is. Like, if you are able to see the things within yourself that are flawed, but you're able to see it and at least have empathy, right? And have an understanding of, like, I can see how they got there. I don't fuck with that. I don't rock with that. And honestly, stay over there. I don't want to be whatever. But I can understand how it got there. And that teaches you about your life, the people around you, the children you'll end up raising. The more we learn about society, about what society does to the people in our country and really in general, the more we'll start to understand about humanity, which will enhance our relationships, enhance our community, and we'll be able to connect more and have better conflict resolution. You feel what I'm saying? So yeah, this is just my take. Diddy is a monster that was created. Okay, and I'm going to continue to break this down as we get deeper and the conversations. Yeah, y'all already know. If you've been here long enough, you know what time it is. You know what time it is. All right? Like, comment, subscribe, especially if you're new here, especially if you've been here. Also, for everybody that was excited about my battle, I apologize. But actually, I don't apologize. But for all the people that was excited for my battle, I don't apologize because I'm ready to go. I'm ready to battle. I'm ready to travel to Jersey and go handle my business. My opponent, however, has some family issues going on. So you know what I'm saying? Grace to bro. I hope everything is dandy. I hope everything goes, condolences and all that. We talking about getting it rescheduled. It could potentially be in the same weekend. I don't know. You feel what I'm saying? But he was talking about potentially getting it rescheduled, the opponent. So, I mean, if it is just that, we should be able to take care of it later. You feel what I'm saying? And battle later. So, we'll figure it out. But I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, especially if you're new here, especially if you've been here. I'm going to catch y'all.